with the one thing that I've heard a lot talk about that I really don't know a whole lot about is the nonprofit exchange, which may be the some people's direction they'd like to go here. Do you know anything about how that would work, especially with essentially you're saying illegal action, like look at tax?
This came up in the hearing this morning. Basically, under Obamacare, under the statute, there are two kinds of exchanges. There's a state-funded exchange, established by the state, funded by the state, and there's a federal exchange that the federal government creates and funds. The federal government also created a partnership exchange because they're so overloaded by the 34 states that are not creating exchanges. They've created out of thin air this idea of a partnership exchange so the state can at least do some of the heavy lifting, but it's still a federal exchange. So that's the two different types of exchange, but then whether it's a state or a federal exchange, they can set it up in really one of two ways. They can either have it be an explicitly government agency or a government chartered nonprofit. And each can do either. And but it doesn't really matter. It's not going to make any difference to consumers. It's not going to make any difference in terms of freedom or the size of government if it's an explicitly government agency or a implicitly government agency, because. And it doesn't really matter if it's a state-funded exchange or a federal exchange in terms of who controls the exchange, because the Secretary of Health and Human Services can control all of the exchanges, state or federal, government agencies or nonprofits. Civilians just call them the shots. And there are three provisions in the law to give her that power. The law gives her the authority to impose whatever requirements she wants, whatever she determines appropriate on any exchange. The law says that states can't enact any law or rule that conflicts with any of the regulations she issues. And she has the power to approve or disapprove a state to create an exchange. So you try to buck the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and she'll sweep aside your exchange or commandeer it, take it over, and make it work. So there's no control for states here. And therefore, you really don't want the state to volunteer to pay to enforce rules and then take the heat for rules that they didn't write in Congress.
Just follow up real quick. You mentioned that the hybrid exchange, is it really a federal exchange? And if it is, does that provide the protections for our citizens for the tax?
It is a federal exchange, which means that under the statute, the IRS has no authority to tax your employers or those 130,000 residents. So it is a federal exchange.
And so we could sort of net what you said to us today, because I've got to close off because I'm doing soapboxing, is for the state to not do anything outside of, yeah, that's right.
Not do anything
Not do anything but put in, allow the federal exchange to take place.
If they can pull it off, there's some doubt about whether the feds can actually pull an exchange off, but yes.
And therefore it puts the pressure on them.
Their problem.
Can I just ask you a three-point question, just real quick? Federal.
3-point question, real quick.
Real quick.
Does not have to contract with anybody.
Who?
Your physicians don't have to contract with the federal government. They don't have to contract with any insurance. How many doctors do you think are not going to do that? How many doctors do you think are going to go cash? How many doctors do you think are going to leave
How many doctors are going to go cash?
Numbers on
how many are going to leave
the The incentives for docs to stop taking Medicare, stop taking private insurance, even are on the rise. More doctors are doing that, but it's just not a solution to Obamacare, because expensive medical care is still going to be expensive, and most people are not going to be able to afford it, and that's why we need health insurance. And we need health insurance that actually serves the interests of consumers rather than politicians or the health insurance plans themselves, and we're just not going to get that into the A lot of physicians are already doing it, and there's a lot of benefits, but that's nowhere near a solution to the problem that Obamacare is.
Okay, we want to thank Michael for coming.